as people start coming in, I think I have some special.
Oh God, no. Are we in for another theme song? It's better than Pokemon last time.
Is this better than Pokemon?
I don't know. Pokemon was a little cringe last time.
To be, we begin, see the leaf skin.
Nope, it's gonna be just as cringe.
In the pot, white to sin. Brewing basics, no basics. By Chaz Grace, by Hawkins and Silver Nipples Ace. C4 Chawa, blooms in the heat. Chain and go up, I can't be beat. Da Hong Pao, the rope so grand. Don't think green spirals, the finest in the land. Elevate with Huang Phoenix swords.
No clue what you said.
Whispers from ancient shores. Ganpu Cha, citrus blend. Gowling's oolong, a fragrant trend. H2I with Huang Jean's glow. Intensity in cups, the flavors show. Jinju Mei's gold, a rich delight. Junchan's needles, a serene sight. Kicking it with Longjing, the dragon well. Leaves unfurl, a story they tell. Mafeng Maojian, mountain's breath. Mingting's Dell, taste is wealth. N2O, we navigate the taste. Ostentatious leaves, no time to waste.
When are we done? When are we done?
When are we done?
How long was that track gonna be?
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the national anthem of China.
Jason, as we have guests coming in, do you want to let them know what the hell they just walked into?
Oh yeah, now we do special songs for each of these AMAs. Something about tea, I think.
I don't think the song made it into the recording for the last one, did it?
Oh, it did.
It did? Okay.
It was like
okay.
a 2-minute pre-start laugh track.
Did we take a good look at how many people on the stream just skipped right over it?
I think they did.
Yeah, 10 seconds in and then they're just quickly 15, 15, 15, 15.
Can we zoom past this, please?
Yeah. All right. Welcome to our guests. For those of you who experienced this really special music, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure there'll be a track again next time. Maybe, Jason, you can upload the full track as a bonus so they can hear it uninterrupted.
Yeah, I can put that right onto the Tea Technique podcast.
Perfect. We're going to kick off the way we kick off every time, which is first by asking everyone, what's in your cup? Jason, you can go first as you're taking a shot.
I guess you want me to go first, sure.
We're staring at you.
Yeah, just a 29-year Brunehaben.
Casual. For people who don't know what that is, you want to break it down a little bit more?
It is one of the smaller distilleries on Islay, highly renowned for their very lightly peated malt scotch, the smoky flavor. 29 years on the relatively older side, and this is independent bottling that I quite like.
All right, starting it off super relatable. I might just jump to Emily, who might have something that's more familiar to other listeners. Emily, what's in your cup today?
9 a.m. Kaoliang.
Yeah, you're at 9 a.m. where you are.
It is 9 a.m. where I am, and it's also a national holiday today. And so in my cup, I have some coffee to just wake me up.
Coffee and Kaoliang.
Yeah, Jason is assuming you've poured a shot of Kaoliang into that.
Yeah, no.
No, I didn't think so.
Maybe like a 9 p.m. thing. Yeah.
Okay.
I gotta get my Tsingtao ready, guys.
Zongjun, that's 9 p.m. What's in your cup at 9 a.m.?
It's just hot water and a little bit of a dental.
Very nice. And Zongjun, where are you joining us from? I know you were a little bit on the move.
I'm from Changsha right now. Beautiful
Very
town.
nice.
Beautiful
Okay.
season.
All right. My turn last. I've got a little bull tea right here. I figured Zongjun, you and I hold down the fort with a little bit of tea. But this is just an osmanthus oolong from a friend of ours who mostly supplies our dancong, actually. But I just wanted something light and floral. It's still nice and that in-between period of summer and fall here in Seattle. So this really felt like it was resonating for me.
Wonderful.
So hopefully our guests are all drinking something nice too, depending on where you are in the world. I'm going to kick it to Jason for some life updates. I know it's been a little while since we had an AMA. It's been a little while since we updated things in general. We were all traveling and then had various things going on in our lives. Jason, what have you been up to in the relative silence of the past, let's call it 4 months?
Oh, the last 4 months, I was in Taiwan for a month. I was in China for a month. And then I was in Italy for a week with my mother. That was a vacation. And then we published the 30-page chapter. And then we published the more recent 20-page chapter. 2 mega chapters followed by 2 months of pretty hard, constant travel certainly set us back. And I think I've mentioned this on Tea Technique before, but I started a company almost exactly 1 year ago, a new company, which is a foolish thing to do. I don't recommend it. Don't start a company.
Second time doing it, but
yeah, some people are just prone to making the same mistakes over and over again. Third time's a charm. I'm sure I'll
Finally stopped.
get the lesson. But of course, that takes up a incredible amount of time. So I try very hard every day to wake up, and first thing I do before looking at my phone, before looking at email, is to write at least a couple pages of the book. I've done that somewhat successfully enough that the book's 700 pages now. And yeah, that's my major life update.
Nice. Mine is that I had my appendix removed about 3 weeks ago. So editing was a little slow in that time. I'm on the mend. I'm healing. I'm going to be back to my usual activities, which mostly involves drinking tea, editing, and reading about tea, but then also deadlifting. So excited to get back into the gym in another couple weeks once I'm fully healed. But otherwise, this past summer was really just traveling with you, Jason, China and Taiwan. But I did spend some time in Japan and Korea and got to do some fun activities there as well. Now, the reason we were all in Taiwan, Emily, you want to share what you've been up to?
Yeah, this is actually my first AMA. Yay.
Welcome.
Woo.
You missed the last one.
Yes, I missed the last one. And the reason they were all in Taiwan is because I'm here, of course. And so I got married and they were here for my wedding in June. Yes.
You were a little busy traveling with a honeymoon or that kind of
No,
thing?
honeymoon
No?
is scheduled for early next year, but I was busy with the planning because we have relatives in different places. We actually had 2 weddings.
So you just recovered. You're just recovering.
I've
from all of it.
recovered. My life is back on track now, and I did do some traveling, yeah, but it was more for like short trips, not honeymoon, which my husband
Well,
still
soon.
owes me.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Songy, where have you been, my guy?
A lot of places. I had to do a little bit of a here and there between China and US. And our most recent Wuyi trip after that, I also started a company working on grinding matcha fresh. So I had to go to Japan for a while and interestingly see
Going to
how
Japan.
the tea industry in Japan works. So see a lot of interesting similarities and difference between the 2 countries.
Nice. Yeah, we heard a little story from you, I think, before we recorded our last episode about some of your experiences in Japan. Maybe they'll come up a little bit today. There were some funny stories in there. But for our listeners, was really just all of our excuses for why we haven't been getting things out timely in the last few weeks. But Jason, I think you're promising to keep us on a pretty tight schedule as we move forward.
I'm trying.
Yeah, we'll see. I think we're going to get a little better. I know some of the upcoming chapters are exciting, but also relatively long.
Yeah, I would say that I don't write the book in exact order that the chapters are published. I get inspired about certain things, or research takes me down a rabbit hole. So actually, quite a number of the upcoming chapters are actually fully already written, which means that it's less of a rush schedule. A lot of the firing work was not, because we did the Yixing trip last year and learned more about the kilns, and we actually went back this year in the 2024 trip. Zongjun and I went back to take a revisit and follow up on some notes and understandings. A lot of the information was literally was written as we were there, as we were doing it, and came back and published it. That's nice when the timing works out.
Yeah, hopefully everyone's excited to see what comes next, but I know I'm excited to keep reading and learning more and revisiting some of the stuff I experienced with you guys. In the tradition of the last few AMAs, with the trips that we've had recently, I do want to ask everybody, what has been your change in tea habits over the last few months? So last year, after we did our Chaozhou trip, I think we all had quite a lot of things that were changing. Obviously, we were drinking a lot more dansong, but there was other changes to our practice. This year, after being in Wuyi, or Jason and Zongjun after revisiting Yixing, Jason, for you and I being in Taiwan, what changes have occurred in your tea habit or tea brewing practice? I'm going to kick this one to you, Jason, first, and then we'll go from there.
I guess a few things. One, I restocked up on Taiwanese tea. Our podcast editor, Nancy, was with me for a week or 2 in Taiwan. And so me, Nancy, and Emily all went to a Taiwanese tea tasting, and it was just mind-blowing. I forgot how much I love Taiwanese high mountain oolongs, particularly really well traditional charcoal roasted Taiwanese high mountain oolongs. And I fell back in love with Shenlanxi, which is not an area that I normally bought and drank a lot from. And I've just been enjoying it. I've been drinking it Laurencha, I've been drinking it Bolti, I've been having it in Yixing. It's great all around. That's been a lot of fun. It's actually funny. Everyone, I guess, expects, particularly after I expected after Chaozhou last year, to just to be drinking a ton more Wuyi tea. And actually, I stocked up on a bunch of Wuyi teas from some trusted suppliers before the trip in order to start tasting and generate this muscle memory and flavor memory so that I would have a better understanding of the cultivars and be able to match things as we were tasting it. And then we went to Taiwan, Pat, and you and I did that mega tasting of Wuyi. And then we got to Wuyi and we didn't buy any tea. And I came back and I just have all the tea that I bought before going to Wuyi. And I haven't really been drinking that much Wuyi tea. I came back from Wuyi. I'm like, I'm going to put this aside for a little while. Yeah, I don't know. Is that disheartening? Is that I just went back to dance on?
Yeah, I think everyone who has probably listened to the episode we posted on our experience in Wuyi probably heard that we think there's obviously more to learn. We just scratched the surface, but at least in the experience that we had, which parts of it were wonderful, we don't feel like we found any teas that were better than what our current vendors or connections are sourcing, which makes sense. You know, they spent years or decades in the area. We were just meeting with a couple producers that some friends were willing to hook us up with. Just to break into my kind of habits, much the same. I have not really been brewing a ton of Wuyi after our experience there. We did buy a little bit of tea from one farmer who we worked with there, which I do really enjoy, and I have been breaking it out every now and then. As I drink it more and more, I do find that the things I like about it are more Dansong than Wuyi Yancha like.
I have that tea. I drink it from time to time. I find that tea to be more of an experiment or a comparison tea than something I actively reach for. It does some interesting things in some teapots, but yeah, I totally agree. It tends to work better with a lot of the Dansong teapots.
To add a little bit of a more color on this tea, it's a super light roast. It's so light that you can hardly taste any roastage. The intention of creating this tea is it's almost like third wave coffee. The producer wants to highlight the tawa rather than the roastage or the roast flavor that people typically associate with Wuyi tea. But the producer wants to highlight more about tea itself, and hopefully we can taste the tawa too.
Yeah, I think what we bought too was quite a unique varietal. It's Chuisha. I don't own any other teas of that varietal, so it is nice to taste a very pure expression of that cultivar and of the area that it came from. But Emily had asked us in the chat why we didn't buy very much when we were in Wuyi. I think that everything that we ran into just didn't really beat the teas that we are currently able to source through other friends. There were some teas that were amazing, actually, that we tasted, but the price to quality ratio was not there.
Astronomical prices.
Zongjun, do you remember what some of the better teas that we had cost? I remember things close to hundreds of dollars per gram, but
Yeah, entry level, it was like
$8 a gram entry level?
Yeah, $8 or $10, sometimes $20 a gram. Didn't make sense.
No. And the best ones were, I feel like, pushing. I know we had one that was maybe 60 or 70 per gram that we were all like, okay, it's a really amazing tea. And I think the most expensive one we tried was pushing $100 per gram. And I think we were all impressed with the tea itself, but when you see the price point, none of us could justify it.
I'm just calling this the multi effect of Wuyi tea. People just putting a price tag on it for the sake of it, and it doesn't really mean anything.
It's a developing good. It's good because it's expensive, or it's desired because it's expensive.
Or the intention of me serving you this tea, and it's so pricey. I'm valuing you as a guest, but this number that I wrote on the price tag, I wrote it yesterday, and
I will accept your expensive things.
Yeah, Zongjun, if you want to serve that tea to me at any point, please feel free. Feel free.
Yeah.
But yeah, the prices were just astronomical. And the crazy thing is it wasn't the best tea that we had. We had better tea at much more normal high. It's Wuyi, high prices, but much more normal prices in Taiwan and at our friend's tea house in Shanghai and elsewhere.
So very little tea was bought while we were in Wuyi, but we've still got our sources. We're going to go back. We're going to learn more to uncover there.
Same question to everyone else.
I continue to drink a ton of Dansong, actually, and brew a ton of Dansong. We obtained some nice cups while we were in Taiwan that I've been experimenting with, but I would actually say that I have been drinking a lot more Japanese tea. Through work, I took a Japanese tea certification course, and it was a nice foundational course. A lot of the material, I think all four of us would already know going into the course, but they supplied us with some good teas. And while I was in Japan this past summer, I also went to a couple places, Jason, that you recommended, and a few of my favorite tea places. And so I picked up a ton of Japanese tea this summer, and you don't want to sit on that. So I've just been drinking a lot of it and hoping to get through it before the weather really turns here. At that point, I'm sure I'll turn back to roasty teas and pu'er.
A lot of gyokuro and sencha.
Yeah, kabusecha, gyokuro, sencha, all that kind of stuff.
Kabusecha too.
Yeah.
I was given a gift of that deep steam, and I hadn't really had much Japanese deep steam tea before, but it was quite nice. I enjoyed that.
I'm really actually into the light steaming. The deep steaming is nice for don't pay attention to it, just a morning cup of tea or whatever. But I do find that the deep steam, much like a really heavy roast, right? While it's enjoyable, it can cover up a lot of the nuances of a certain tea. So it's that category, the Fukamushi Sencha, where you'll see the worst of the worst and some of the best.
Yeah, it really magnifies the flaw of the cultivar and the gardening.
Zongjun, I know you were in Japan quite a bit. Any changes either from Wuyi or your other travels in your tea brewing habits?
Japan didn't really make any impact on my tea drinking habit. I'm all into this Chaozhou game here, if you guys can see it.
Oh, we see it. We see it.
Yeah.
Zongjun just
I have my
showing off.
Nilu, I have my kettles, I have everything set up in Changsha. This is great.
I love that on this audio medium for everyone who's not online, that they're going to hear us just all, ooh, ah. But yeah, Zongjun just showed us a really nice setup. We'll post a picture of it. There we go.
It's a very nice, very trad Chaozhou setup.
And I was just going to say, Zongjun, when we were visiting you in Changsha, while you had a nice setup, you didn't set up that nice for Jason and I. What's up with that?
Yeah, I recently finished my furnace in the balcony, so I moved everything downstairs.
Which is great because that was a sweat lodge sitting in the attic space.
Straight up sauna. We were in Zongjun's attic. It was so hot. We have the Nilu going with charcoal, and we are just semi-finished it. We are just sweating bullets.
No air, no AC, only 2 windows on either ends of the attic, burning charcoal. We were probably asphyxiating ourselves. Tea tasted great. Blasting music. That was a fun way to be in Changsha, but it was an experience.
It was a welcome drink. Better show some hospitality to my Laowai friends. Yes.
Thank you. We did not drink any of the $10+ a gram yanchas that we had tried, unfortunately, but Zongjun took care of us.
Yeah, we sweated it out there, then we sweated it out with the Changsha
spicy
food.
It was amazing. Emily, I'm going to kick it over to you. You weren't on the studying portion of the tea trip with us, but we saw you in Taiwan. Since the last time we saw you, how have things changed? Did we impact your drinking habits?
To be honest, not really, because I think I've always been in Taiwan. I've always been drinking Taiwanese tea, high mountain oolongs. I'd say like 90% of my tea would be Chinese high mountain oolongs. I mean, some light roasted, some dark roasting. I usually select my tea based on the weather. So if I feel it's like really hot or if it's really humid, if it's humid and slightly lower temperature, I go for a more dark roasted, a heavier roasted tea. If it's hotter, and I would usually go for a lighter roast. But yeah, mostly Taiwan tea. My tea habits is actually the inverse. My tea habits changed when you guys were in here. When you guys left, it returned to its normal pattern. So while you guys were here, like Jason said, we visited a lot of different tea houses and coffee houses. And it's really then when I had the opportunity to drink more teas that I don't have relatively easy access to. So like the Wuyi cha. At the tea house, we had a really good old lao cha and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I knew there was no way with Jason there for a month and me there for a week that at least for that week or so, your tea habits weren't going to change. But
yes.
Okay, we're going to start kicking into the questions that were submitted for us. Let me just go through here. Jason, I think we've got a question from a reader who was interested. I don't think they live in your area, but interested in how the bi-monthly tea gathering is going. And potentially it sounds like maybe they're going to want to drive down to check it out at some point, but looking to understand more about that.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Sometimes we have 6 people here and sometimes it's me and one other person. and we pull out whatever teas people want to drink. If they have something that they want to share, I can brew it for them. They can see what it tastes like if I brew. We could use whatever wares I have. If they have a teapot that's having issues or they can't figure out what it is, I've done some teapot identification for people. I did some pu'er identification verification for some people, or put it side by side with some of my pu'ers from supposedly the same area. So we've had good fun. Sometimes there's not really any active questions. You all just gather and drink tea. And sometimes there's tons of questions and people come pre-prepared with what they want to talk about. And sometimes they're thematic, right? When we got back from Wuyi, we did all Wuyi teas. But yeah, usually they're just whatever we feel like drinking that day. And they'll go on 2-3 hours, however long people want to stick around.
Nice. I'm hoping that the next time I go out to New York, we'll line up nicely with one of these sessions. But either way, you and I will be drinking tea for 2 or 3 or
Yeah,
more hours.
More hours.
Okay, so hopefully that answered that reader's question and encouraged them to make the trip out. We got another question on here from Instagram. When do you expect to finish the Yixing book, and what's next after that? Somebody wants more.
When do I think we're going to finish the Yixing book? I thought we had finished the Yixing book last year.
Are we going to actually finish it, Jason? I feel
It's
like
just
the
going to
book
extend
is
off
getting longer and
into,
longer.
I'm going to extend off into infinity, but I don't know. I'm going to keep writing this book forever. No, the book has a clear ending in sight. We are more than halfway. The majority of the book is now written. There's a couple of areas that have some open experimentation, but I think if we stick to a bi-monthly cadence, we'll probably publish the last bit of this book in February, March of next year, which would be perfect because then we'll be in China for Tea Technique Research Trip 2025, which leads me to the answer to the next question. What's the next book we're going to work on? I think we're going to do pu'er. I think we're doing it. I think we're biting the bullet and we're going to write the pu'er book.
Okay. Yeah.
Willie's acting like you didn't know. I feel like you knew that.
There is another question, which was, we'll address more of it at another point, but part of the question was, what will next year's trip be? So we're answering that here, making news.
Yep.
But Jason, as you think about writing a book on pu'er, where do you even start, man?
It's only going to be a short book.
As if any of them were going to be.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Short book.
Yeah, real short, easy to read, no complexities there, no diversions about the Miao minority groups and the itinerant wanderings and social realism in contemporary Yunnan.
The metaverse, Renaissance painters, nothing else. No other rabbit holes will go down.
No other rabbit hole. You haven't even gotten to the Renaissance painting chapter in the Yixing book.
There was one in the previous book.
There was. There's one in this book too. That's great. I think that's one of my favorite chapters.
It's a theme. Yeah. It's a theme.
It's a theme. We're going to have to somehow include the Renaissance paintings in the pu'er book. No, I think honestly, that's going to be a pretty difficult and long book to write. It needs to obviously start with the history of pu'er, the history of that area. Yunnan as a hinterlands. Yunnan is outside the core politically central China. Yunnan is an area of Han influx going all the way back to Yuan dynasty during the mining ban on interior China, not to upset the farmers, which were considered to be the most important people during the dynastic system. They banned mining throughout politically central China. And so all of the Han miners went out to the hinterlands, predominantly Yunnan, in order to mine copper. The level of mining intensity was so intense that the mines ran out of copper by Qing dynasty, which started some of the overseas copper trade, which brought in Chinese into Southeast Asia, particularly Penang and other areas around Malaysia, which starts part of the overseas Chinese trade, which influences the shipments of Yixing teapots, starts some of the early proto-overseas trading that led to things like lubao in Indonesia and overseas pu'er. Anyway, it's going to be a long book. Just that type of social history alone is probably going to take up the first 200-300 pages.
Yeah, we've got a comment from Danny here that I think is accurate. If the Yixing book is 700 pages already unfinished, I'm sure the pu'er book is going to be long.
Yeah, it's going to be long.
I love that from writing a Yixing book to a pu'er book, and you still somehow find a way to incorporate mining and Yixing. You can't get away from it. Is this your way of telling everyone you're a big Minecraft fan, or
no?
Team Roblox?
Yeah, Team Roblox all the way. I think that the Hindenburg Research is posting stuff about Roblox right now, so I guess that's not very popular. Equity short seller.
Ah, okay.
Roblox has been inflating its number of active users fraudulently. You heard it here first.
The market closed. That's why we did it at this time.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, right? Because Yixing, this book became accidentally gigantic and was much more complicated to write. And it turns out that Yixing just touches everything. When you start writing about the production of ceramics, your first ceramics production book, you have to write about mine development. You have to write about ore processing, manufacturing, brings you straight to Joseph Needleham's questions. And all of these things are so interconnected and minutely interesting, right? People have said before that reality is fractal in its complexity. You look at something, you think you understand it, and then you look at a component of it and realize that you have to re-understand the whole thing all over again. And I think that will be true in Puer. I think that will be true in any of the books that we write, that reality has a consistently fractal complexity. And what's nice is that as you build up those fractal lenses, that many of them start to overlap, and you can just, instead of writing a new 100-page section, you could just say, if you want more information on this, go read book 1, go read book 2, this specific chapter. And I think when you can write an entire book just by referencing specific chapters of previous books, I think then you're done. Put down the writing pen and
hang up your hat. You're good to go.
Yeah.
That's when we can go back to just writing about the metaverse and other things completely unrelated to tea. And then in that, we can just have in the footnote, if you would like to learn more about this one specific topic, refer to book 1. Okay. I think you had a lot of questions in that one.
Book 7 or book 8, like it would just be a book about, referencing every single book that we have written in the past.
And that's the one that we put a print publication out for. It's a meta book.
It's a meta book.
You can use that book to refer to the digital books and their chapters. Okay. I think you got a lot in that question. I'm going to ask a question that we have a listener present for. So thank you for submitting the question, Danny. A question for the Joe Bros. That's how we wrote it. But Emily, you're included. Don't worry. Could you go over the crush and pack technique a little bit more? So I think we talked about this crush and pack technique when we were in Chaozhou. We also, I think in the Wuyi episode, which we just recently put out, we talked about how we didn't really see a lot of crush and pack. We didn't really see teapots. We didn't see a lot of crush at all, even with gaiwans. So I think just for all the listeners, either Zongjun or Jason, would either of you like to take what is crush and pack, and then maybe we can unpack what we've been seeing between Chaozhou and Wuyi?
Yeah, basically you decided a portion of the tea that you are going to dump into your teapot being slightly crushed on your hand. And how crushed it is, it's in your control, and how much tea is going to be crushed is also in your control. And that crushed portion supposedly is going to extract a little bit more and add a little bit of flavor or spice it up a little bit of the overall flavor profile of the tea that you're going to brew. And we've been consistently using it in the past, and this time in Wuyi, surprisingly, we didn't actually see any practice of that technique in the city, which was very interesting. And very few people actually use teapot to begin with. And for some very few incidents, they mentioned something about using the teapot, or they save certain teapots for some of the very priced or expensive or rare tea that they used. And it was like one teapot for one tea. You don't really know if that was a whole marketing kind of a scheme, or like that was the actual practice of people doing that in the city. But that was what we have observed in Wuyi. A lot of gaiwan, no crush.
All gaiwans, all electric kettles, just pouring an approximately 8-gram bag, little baggie of Wuyi tea into the gaiwan, and then really honestly just splashy fun time. Splashy fun time's unfair. We didn't see a ton of very wet brewing, but there wasn't a ton of gong fu behind a lot of the brewing that we saw. So it's just water.
I think that the Wuyi people were totally unskilled. It wasn't like it wasn't as much splashy fun time as say Yunnan brewing, which is really heavy pours and that kind of stuff. There's still some skill there, I thought, but I thought it was very strange how they didn't seem to care about the kettle. They were just using totally electric kettles, not even tetsubins on a burner or anything, and no teapots really at all. And I personally got very marketing vibes when they were like, oh, for more special teas, we would use a teapot. And I was like, no, I don't know about this.
Yeah. To bring it back to crush and pack, I think if we want to just give a little bit more of a prescriptive approach, I think a lot of numbers that have been thrown out in the past, we've heard something like 60-40, 70-30, 80-20 as the percent of whole leaf to crushed leaf that you're putting in the teapot. And there's a lot of different techniques as far as how you pack the pot. We often learned when we were studying with various teachers, including a lot of actually Taiwan-based teachers, which is where we've seen the most of this. I don't feel like in mainland China we've seen a lot of crush and pack. It's really been a lot of the Taiwanese teachers that we had. But you were often either adding whole leaf directly into the pot and then crushing with your finger in the middle of the teapot, where the outer leaf would then help form the chadan, or basically a wall of tea that would keep the fines from your filter. Other ways that we've seen teachers do it and that we do it, this is what I most often do, is I take some portion of the tea I plan to brew, crush that in my hand, I add that to the teapot more towards the back, and then I'll add my whole leaf tea on top of that and in front of that, so that once I pour, my first pour, I'll usually be pouring closer to the spout of the teapot. I won't be trying to swirl or agitate. And then that way, the kind of crushed tea leaves are sitting closest to the handle of the teapot and the bottom. And as the tea leaves expand, the whole leaves that are closer to the spout will help block those fines from going through. Hopefully that kind of helps all of our listeners understand a little bit more of what crush and pack is. I think you see good examples online too.
We saw some crush and pack in Chaozhou, not super frequent. And if you ask about it in Chaozhou, everyone knows it. It's not in or something. They're like, oh no, we don't do that. But just no one pulls out the teapot and does it, with few exceptions, which I think is interesting. What my understanding is that it seems to be a preference of older people, older style, when tea was higher fired, when they were using up the last of the teas in a bag that was naturally crushed. This idea of purposely crushing and then layering and packing seems to have at least somewhat fallen out of favor. So
Yeah, I totally agree. You see that much more frequent when you were drinking tea with older tea drinkers in Chaozhou.
Sometimes
some
you're
extent.
just drinking straight up dust.
Yes, straight up crush from a caddy. That was something.
We had some amazing dust with some teachers.
Yeah, 11 p.m. at night, pure dust in a teapot, overdose.
wired
Yeah.
Thanks, Yang Laoshe. Yeah.
for hours.
Thank you, Yang.
No, we needed to go drink after that because we knew we couldn't sleep. That was a special experience. Okay, hopefully we answered that question.
I'll add one more thing to that. I do sometimes like crush and pack, and I have a single teapot that I use almost exclusively for crush and pack. And there is real skill and technique when doing crush and pack. And pretty frequently, you don't generally see people doing it unless they also have a tea boat and they're going to linghu, pour boiling water over the teapot as it's brewing. So there is a whole set of skills that go into crush and pack beyond just the layering and the stacking. And it does produce quite a unique flavor profile. And usually the challenge there, the show of skill there, is to do your first 3 brews and have each brew taste identically the same. So you're not looking for that type of dynamic shift between brews that you normally do in a less extracted brewing method.
Thanks for adding that color. There was another part of this question. I think we touched on it a little bit as we were talking about teapots and some of the marketing aspects. We were asked, you mentioned that it was almost exclusively gaiwans and wuyi. Would you consider that a function of the tourism industry in the area? Or is that something that you think developed organically because it complemented the tea there?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like a lot of these tea house or tea stores are really just a showroom of their product. And you go in there, you sample the teas, and it's really not about brewing or having a tea moment with the people. It's about sampling all of the products and you decide what to buy, mostly.
Yeah.
So the whole gaiwan technique, I think it's more optimized upon procurement. People wanted to come and do a quick kind of a sampling and then they make decisions.
Yeah, because people wouldn't want to buy testing tea out of a Yixing. They would correctly assume that there would be too much influence. But I don't think that gaiwans are a particularly good match for yancha. I don't think they're terrible. I use them, but just not. It's like the whole region
Like
is
the
a
whole
tea vendor
region.
convention.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Wuyi Town feels like.
Pretty much.
That's how I felt when we were walking around. We didn't even pop into a lot of stores, but every street had just tons and tons of tea stores. There was massive boxes of things labeled Laocong Suishan. There's tons of things labeled like Nulangkong Rogui. And we're talking about big boxes that probably have 50 kilograms of tea in it. We all know that there's only so much Nulangkong Rogui, right? So you step into any one of those stores and you're likely to be served a bunch of different teas and gaiwans so that you can evaluate. And I'm sure they're going to push quickly upon you how rare this tea is, how good the value is, and how it's the best tea you're going to find. Yeah, we didn't step into a lot of places like that because we knew what we would be in for, I think.
No, but the other thing, a lot of them didn't smell good. They didn't look good. The tea looked charry. It looked roasted to death. The whole place had these open bags, which is just not how you store good tea.
You don't like the cigarette smell from the people who are working there
It wasn't
smoking
like,
and getting
yeah,
into the
it wasn't
bags?
like
Yeah.
Dansong, where like the average level of tea quality just wandering around Chaozhou is so high.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely agree with that.
and it feels less organically incorporate into people's daily life in Wuyi. In Chaozhou, you have people just casually sitting around with a Chaozhou tea set and brewing tea, drinking. It's clearly part of their life. Less so in Wuyi. Although we do see some culinary match with Wuyi tea, with all of these very roasty, toasty Wuyi food. That's not really Fujian food. It's actually closer to Jiangxi food. It's more spicy, it's more oily, it's more smoky. And we do see some reminiscence of that kind of culinary preference in comparison with Wuyi tea and also like Tomuguan, Lapsan Xiuzhong, all of those kind of tea practice.
Let's not talk about Wuyi food because I'm pretty sure the Xiaocao tartare is what gave me appendicitis. So let's not talk too much about that.
Emily, do you have
Yeah.
access to Jiangxi food in Taiwan? Do you go out for Jiangxi food?
I don't normally go out for Jiangxi, but I'm sure there is, but I've never actually looked out for it. Should I?
Smoked Jiangxi duck is something like that was.
I will agree it was good, but we had it like 4 days in a row. It was a
Yeah,
little
4 days
too
in
much.
a row was a little bit too much, but
There wasn't a lot of variety.
I think we kept getting showed the local foods, the famous things by the people who were taking us out,
The same local foods again and again
like
and again.
which were great once or twice.
Would you like a
Like,
Jiangxi roast duck? Imagine going to Beijing and having Beijing duck 4 nights in a row. Someone's, oh, well, you're in Beijing. You must have the Beijing duck.
Oh, you've been here a couple of days? Have you tried the duck yet? Let's go out for the duck. Yeah, that was the experience. I do wonder, did you guys think that we were just going to be such hardcore Chaozhou bros after being in Chaozhou, going to Wuyi? Like, I thought this year would be the year of the Wuyi bros.
I thought it was going to be the year of Wuyi. I thought all I was going to be talking about, all I was going to be drinking, all of the everything was just going to be Wuyi, but it didn't turn out that way.
Emily, has
Oh.
hearing us talking about Chaozhou and Dansong nonstop, has that gotten to you a little bit? Are you going to start buying some of these Dansongs with us?
Jason's been very
Oh, yeah.
persuasive, pushing me about dancong stuff.
You should acquire some dance song.
Yeah.
Maybe more than we've been pushing Yixing, even, honestly.
Yeah.
While you're writing
Oh,
a
yeah.
Yixing book.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've surprised everyone that dance song's not going to be the next book. It'll come. It'll come. I wonder if the dance song book is harder than the Puer book. I don't think it is.
Famous last words.
Yeah, dancing is really a lifestyle, I feel like. And I think we ought to physically live there for a while to be able to actually write it.
I think we probably just need to change our Instagram handle, our URL. It just needs to change to Dansong Bros or something like that. Tea Technique is so last year. It's time to change it. Doesn't represent who we are anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get this next question in here. Let's see. So this one's to you, Jason. Any advice on introducing antique wares into your practice if you're newer to tea or if you're not swimming in cash like you, Jason? I think you've described in a previous episode how you Scrooge McDuck just swim through gold coins. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Thanks. Yes, you can drown in gold coins.
I'll recommend it.
A snorkel. Yeah, how to buy antiques without money. There's a great book that I keep by my side at all times called Confessions of a Poor Collector. Top recommendation. I highly do recommend.
I do like that your recommendation is to buy something, though.
Yeah. Starting with the book. Confessions of a Poor Collector. That's a book, I think it was published in 60s, 70s. It's a pretty old book. Comes back into vogue from time to time. My recommendations and my experience in buying antiques is very similar to that recommendation. It's much more renowned collector than I am, which is easy when you're collecting great European paintings. But the number one thing is don't buy maybes. To put it very glibly, there was a very well-known collector who has tons of Klints in his collection, and just a few Picassos, but the Clints are really what he is about. And he said every painting that he approaches, he rates them into either oh my, or oh my God. And he tries to only buy the third one, the oh my God. And I would say the same certainly holds true in Yixing collecting, that don't split your money and buy two teapots when you can pay more for a single great piece. And be patient and be willing to wait for what you're looking for, what things come through, and buy exclusively from trusted sources. Don't take flyers on auctions unless you have experience knowing what you're looking for. Don't think you're getting a steal on eBay. The forgers are more experienced at forging than you are at collecting. If possible, don't buy sight unseen for your first one or two, or call someone who's bought from someone before and talk to them about what someone says it is and what they think it actually is. Try to reach consensus, try to have individuals that you trust that have experience, and try to use their wares. One of the reasons that I do that monthly tea gathering is specifically so that people can come and they can use these wares that I'm collecting. And I would say there are things that I have purchased for this book that were not at that oh my God level, but they were filling gaps in a collection that I feel needs to be complete in order to write this book. And then I might consider deaccessioning after. I hate the idea of giving up pieces of the collection, but there are certainly pieces that I don't think belong in that third category of great works.
So it sounds like people can reach out to you once the book is done and obtain some oh my teapots.
Yes, they can.
Yeah, I would just add for my little piece of flavor, I don't own nearly as many antique teapots as you, but for newer collectors, there are some good online resources. There are some trusted vendors. Just know you will be paying a markup, but there are certainly vendors online who you can trust their antique wares. We're not here to make vendor recommendations, so I'm not going to call them out here. But if you're following the Instagram tea scene, you've probably already seen a lot of their wares before. They're not of the caliber of many of the things that you can find if you have direct connections and you're paying more, but you can feel some reassurance and sleep well at night knowing that what you got is most likely the real thing.
And look for private collectors. Look for people who you've seen collecting before, and you can always reach out on Instagram and say, is there anything you're willing to part with? A lot of people do, but they're not active sellers. They're not an active market. Also, a great recommendation from The Confessions of a Poor Collector. There are three things that make people sell art. The 3 Ds: death, divorce, and debt, right? And if you can find anyone with one of those problems.
Yeah, Jason, we all hope that your company works out, but if it doesn't, we've got some capital for you.
A lineup of willing and ready buyers.
Seen a couple nice pieces. I've handled a few of your nice teapots.
It's fine, Pat. You're in the will. He'll wait.
I will, yeah.
Grab a number.
I don't know, Zongjun. I met him first. I might be ahead of you. We'll see.
Oh, I see.
It depends on what the cause of death is, probably. There's some clauses in there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Poisoning by tea, I think we're both out.
Malcha, another Wuyi trip.
Yeah,
with,
another Wuyi trip might do it.
Another
The Mao
Wuyi
Cha
trip.
would do it.
Another bit of Songshu tartar.
I don't have any more appendixes to lose from that.
This season of Christie's auction, relics of the Wuyi Bros.
I don't know. I don't know who those people are. The Wuyi Bros. I've never heard of them.
Bros.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, Emily, you've been a little quiet on here because I think some of these questions were very trip related and you weren't on the trip with us. So we've got one here that's not trip related. What's been inspiring you all recently? And I'm going to specifically put that towards the tea practice. So for your tea practice, what's been inspiring you either to learn or to try new things? How have you been getting motivation to continue learning about tea?
That sounds like a simple question, but it's actually really hard to answer because I think what inspires me changes all the time. From every chapter edit, sometimes I find this, hey, this seems pretty interesting, and then I spur out and then I look for that. Sometimes it's more occasional where I might go somewhere, I might visit Tan, and then my tea would be very Hongcha heavy. So it's really hard for me to answer what inspires me recently. I feel like it really depends on what I experience, and I like to change it up a bit. But I must say the most inspirational part would be being a part of this team. Getting to hear all these different experiences and trips to Wuyi or to upcoming trips, all that, very exciting.
Yeah, pit stop in Taiwan on the way to Wuyi again next year. Yeah, that makes sense to me, though. I think definitely travel and whatever's happening recently definitely influences my tea practice as well. I'm going to pass it off to Zongjun. What's been inspiring you to learn and grow in your tea practice?
Recently, it has just really been digging of my old piles. After having a more stationary setup, finally I can start experimenting out of these tea collections that I have piled up in the past few years and try to brew them and try to experiment them and try to see what's good, basically. It's been fun. It has been a fun trip. All these teas serve as a little bit of a reminder or piece of memory that I can think of when I drink them. That was great.
Were you inspired at all by seeing the tea agriculture in Japan? You had mentioned that once or twice, that you had some stories about that. Is that inspiration or is it the opposite of inspiration?
It's not necessarily an inspiration. Most of the teas that I had in Japan were not that good, especially for a lot of the sencha or fukamushi cha. Oh, not that good of my preference, first of all. People spend a lot of time trying to create this tea. I do respect that. But what they have end up creating is something that's just so different from a Chinese tea drinker that I'm not really getting convert into those tea categories. Maybe except hojicha. Hojicha is its own world.
I'm a hojicha bro too, don't worry.
And that preference also apply to matcha too. There are some matchas that taste excellent. It's just phenomenal, out of the world good. And for a lot of the matchas, I think the whole consumer preference kind of has its own Sony moment. It's so evolved for the domestic market that it's a little bit hard for the outsiders to get into very easily.
I'm convinced matcha is a better flavor for baked goods than it is for drinks.
So my inspiration is almost the exact opposite of yours, Zongjun. I was in Japan a little bit this summer as well, not as specifically for tea, but I did go to quite a lot of tea shops. I think we've talked about at length in other podcasts our preference acquisition and how Japanese tea always felt like it was an area where we enjoyed the tea, but we never felt like we found things that rose to the level of a lot of the same products we were drinking in the Chinese tea world or even in the Korean tea world. I only feel now, this is 10 years after first moving to Japan, right? And Jason and I had gone to Japan 12 years ago. Being in the tea world for 14 years, I only feel like I've started to find really good Japanese tea in the last year or two. And so I did get a lot of great tea this summer. Some of it thanks to Jason's recommendations, some of it some other shops I really like. And I have really been going down the Japanese tea rabbit hole. And as I mentioned up top, took that Japanese kind of fundamentals tea course, which was good. I would recommend it for anyone who's just getting into Japanese tea. For everyone here, a higher level might be appropriate, but it did kick me in the butt to start studying not the Japanese way of tea, not China. I don't think anything will kick me in the butt hard enough to start doing that again, but to start really studying the teas themselves more. So I've really been going down that rabbit hole a lot. And then in addition, there was a Northwest Tea Fest here just about 2 weeks ago. Saw a lot of friends and vendors, mostly in the kind of Chinese, Taiwanese tea space, and just sitting down with a lot of people for a good amount of time, having tea with them again. I think just relit the fire a little bit to keep pushing and learning more.
To echo a little bit of your journey of finding good Japanese tea, I totally agree with that. Don't get me wrong, there are good Japanese tea out there for you to drink and try, but it's really hard to find them. Like the whole Japanese tea industry, it's so strikingly similar to Chinese tea industry. Like something that I learned throughout the trip is that there are only 1.6% of Uji tea is actually made in Uji. And all the other Wuji tea were like Kagoshima, like mass-produced tea leaves that just end up getting processed in Wuji for it to be called Wuji tea. It's just identical to how like all of these Longjings and Biluochuns are made in China. They are all Guizhou tea or Sichuan tea, and they just end up being processed over there to be labeled as the region.
Taiwanese Haimao Oolong, the same thing.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see similar kind of phenomena. It's also happening in a different country. Definitely, you need to take some effort into finding those good teas. They do exist, but it's hard to find. Definitely not off from a tea shop right after you get from a JR off.
Yeah, agreed. The stations have some great things in them. Maybe don't go to the tea shops in the stations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jason, did we give you an opportunity to answer this one?
No.
Oh, well, we'll just skip you. We're good.
Yeah.
That's
Bye.
okay. And that's all the time we have. I guess I have a three-part-ish answer to this. A long-term inspiration, the things that keeps me writing day after day are twofold. One is going back to places where we've been, like Yixing or like Chaozhou, and having tea brewed for me, brewing tea for someone, discussing teas, and really seeing a step up in the knowledge and the stature. Returning to Chaozhou this year and sharing tea with people. There's certainly a recognition that comes with the frequency of the visits and the familiarity, and then being with everyone more comfortable presenting theories and ideas, or having presented theories or ideas last year and coming back this year and they're like, ah, we tried that. That was a good idea. Even now, our friends in China who are living this every day are taking tea technique seriously and are executing some of the ideas that we have about experiments or about manufacturing techniques and things like that. I think that that's a real source of inspiration, that this isn't just new information or new codification in English. It's truly a new codification in Chinese as well. That's number one. Number two is some of the commission work that we're doing. I get really excited about that. We've said we have a new commission of Yixing teapots that's already done. It just happens to be somewhere in Zongjun's
Zongjun.
apartment waiting shipment to the US. So there's going to be a new set of Yixing teapots that are going to be very helpful in writing the next portion of the book. And then the last thing, I don't know if you guys want to comment on either of those things, but the very last thing that I'll mention, which is very minor and is very short, fleeting inspiration, is I don't use social media, right? Pat runs the Tea Technique Instagram.
It barely runs it, but yes.
The apps on my phone are encrypted text messaging and my personal and work email. And I don't really look at a lot of social media or anything, but I do from time to time. Nancy follows all of the tea people, and I will scroll through. And every once in a while, there's just something that I'm sure is benign and supposed to be friendly and promotional. I just find it like pure rage bait. This is not correct. This is total fluff. And this must be corrected. Thankfully, I don't have any desire to start flame wars off of Nancy's Instagram account. So I usually.
So you log into the Tea Technique one and start the flame war there.
Yeah, let's go bomb throwing from the Tea Technique. No, normally that inspires notes, either that one day get written something in the book that's a direct refutation of something that I read, or every once in a while it'll go on Cult of Quality for my less refined and more combative opinion pieces.
Very tangential. We don't have to talk about this for very long, but just talking about scrolling through Tea Instagram, I would say over the last year, I've noticed a lot more Tuanshandao. And this is something that we've been talking about for, I don't know, 12 years and starting to see it pop up a lot. So I think we need to get a couple more entries in one of the books about it to just make sure that all these search engine optimizations pull up Tea Technique.
I'm not saying that we started it, but we were talking about Tuanshandao before most people knew what Tuanshandao were.
We certainly didn't start it because somebody made Tuanshandao at some point, so they started it. But we're gonna claim restarting it in the Western facing tea culture.
Yeah.
We've got just 2 questions left, and Emily, I know you have to leave really soon, so I'm gonna pass this question off to you, Emily. This is just a real lighthearted one from an Instagram follower. What stuff have you been either reading, watching, listening to? What's been your recent piece of media that you've been engaged in?
I've been watching some K-drama on and off. And I have to say I'm super into the export of K-pop, including dramas and music, and everyone will know that, but I don't know if anyone in the audience is similar to me, where I look for concentrated summaries of these dramas on YouTube. And then
because they've been going on for so long that you need the summary, or?
No, it's just like I won't have to go through 16 episodes of stuff, and then they would
you
just
want the plot. You want the thick.
I want the plot, and then I
summary.
watch it at 2 times speed. Yeah, so a lot of my media algorithms would be those kind of summarized dramas or doggy kitty YouTubers, and that's most of my media stuff.
Yeah, we've all seen your cat pictures. Pretty cute. But that's who, right?
Panghu, yeah, he's a lot
fat
bigger.
tiger.
Oh,
Fat tiger, yes. He's an orange cat named Panghu, fat tiger.
So cute. So cute. Okay. Emily, thank you for joining us. I know you need to drop.
Thank
So
you.
thanks for your time
Thank
today.
you all.
Jason, Zongjun, I'm going to pass the same question off to either of you.
I'll start. Recently, aside of all of my regular habits of reading and watching, I got into our urban exploration. Seeing all of these urban relics in the past few decades in China is amazing. And been taking a lot of photos and reading a lot of photo taking techniques.
Zongjun is
with
holding
camera.
up a camera, just so everyone knows.
Yeah, and a lot of these diaries of people venture into these abandoned buildings and the history of these buildings, how they got built because of certain policies of the local government or certain construction sites being abandoned because of certain things happened to some companies, and reading the history of the companies. And we actually end up venture into a few sites, and we digging out like all these old records of like how many concretes got imported on that day and when did it stop and what kind of economic situation was at that time. It's very interesting. It's a physical epitome of a piece of modern history in your hand.
Very nice. That's pretty
Yeah.
intense. It also sounds like a lot of those places would be haunted, but that's for you. That's for you to enjoy. Don't think about that when you go on them next time.
Yeah,
Jason?
then definitely getting some Tadao Ando vibe in all these concrete structures.
Obviously, I keep up quite a heavy pace of reading, usually going through like 4 or 5 books at the same time. I have tea stuff. I have usually something on nonfiction. I just read Picasso's War, excellent book on the founding of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Highly recommended. Excellent book. Despite being titled Picasso's War, it actually has relatively little to do with Picasso. Picasso was the white whale of the Museum of Modern Art. It took them until World War II to be able to acquire Picasso pieces. And then I'm also reading cover to cover Modernist Cuisine, which is 4,000 pages.
More of a reference book for me, but
Yeah, so I like to read reference books cover to cover. It helps me.
and write them. You like to write them cover to cover too.
Yeah, you can see there's a theme here. Outside of that, I love cinema critique. I really love movies. You'd think I'd spend enough hours of the day staring at a screen and wouldn't want to do more, and that's partially true. But there's something to me about movies I just find to be really amazing. And I have a letterbox that if anyone's truly interested in, they can message me. I'll give you my letterbox link where I review and rate movies on the side.
Hot take, Jason finds movies amazing.
What do you mean? Too many of my movies are rated highly?
No, I mean, you just watch good movies. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I find amazing movies.
Yes. Yeah. You also said I find movies to be amazing.
I do.
Thought that was one of the spiciest things you said.
Anyway, recently I've been watching a lot of movies with Humphrey Bogart and Marilyn Monroe and made it during that era. And I find the plot to be more complicated, the dialogue to be more witty, the action to be more realistic. And you watch one of those versus, say, a contemporary Marvel film, and you wonder, did people really get that much dumber?
You mean the plot needing to be restated multiple times, just in case anyone forgot what they were watching?
There's a film reviewer who I like. The best critique that I heard is that the thing that went wrong in Hollywood is that we used to have grown-ass adults writing movies for other individuals with life experiences. And now we have inexperienced children writing movies for other inexperienced children. And it's a pretty searing critique on social commentary on the state of the world today, but it's hard to find too much fault in it when you see that most Marvel films are ranking in at like a 4 point something.
This is the greatest movie experience I've ever had. It
Yeah.
made me think about life and deep stuff. Okay, well, I'll maybe take this down a notch and go a little more lowbrow with mine. Not immediately, at least. I've been reading Moving Towards Stillness. It's a book on kind of martial arts philosophy. It's just an anecdotal book. It's just a fun little read, but that's been fun to read before bed. I normally read sci-fi, but have found it to be a little too engaging recently and needed something that can kind of help me stop thinking before bedtime. So that's been good. And then moving into the lowbrow, I've been reading a lot of webtoons and manga. One Piece still going strong, 1,000+ chapters in there. And then on the music side, there's been one artist that I've really enjoyed over the last year. Been into them for much longer, but they've had a big break this year. They're called Bill Murray, not related to the actor in any way, shape, or form. But it's a really fun group that basically combines some elements of heavy music, like heavy metal and more of the hardcore kind of music, with a little bit of a hyper pop and a country twang to it. It sounds like it shouldn't work, but it's really skillfully done and just super fun. And if you watch any of their kind of live stuff, they're just so much fun to see doing their thing. So I've been really enjoying that. Jason, I think you had one question that was submitted by email, right?
Before we get there,
Yeah.
I will check out Bill Murray. That sounds interesting to me. But on the lowbrow or lowbrow, highbrow, or the highest brow, the lowbrow that you were talking about, I've been reading Sandman.
Sandman's excellent. Neil Gaiman in general is excellent. The Graveyard Book was really fun. I just read that this year.
I haven't read that, but I have been overwhelmingly impressed by Sandman.
Yeah, he's one of the best fictional authors of all time.
Yeah. I don't know if that's highbrow or lowbrow, but it's amazing.
It's a book. Books are books.
It's a graphic
Yeah.
novel. It's not anime. It's not manga.
Yeah, and I love those things, but you can admit what's high and lowbrow, though. It's okay. It's okay. I don't need to always be reading art books. It's all
like
right.
something you would like, Zongjun. If you haven't read Sandman, any Neil Gaiman,
I've not, but
I
I'll
think
definitely.
it's something you would really like.
Jason, I'm going to pass it to you for the last question.
Do you have any Yixing teapots that you regret buying? To which I can say yes.
I can also say yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the neon water polish, the green Luni,
The Lewist of the knee.
the Lewis of the knee.
Yeah, I don't know. Every once in a while, I'll purchase something and use it and say, what in the world was I thinking? Really, my only super bad purchase, I guess my only really super bad purchase was I have a 80s F1 Zuni that is perfectly fine teapot, good for what it is. But for pairings and usability, I find that it's really a Hongcha pot. And there's other teapots I prefer from that. And then I bought a Wuyi sitting Junie that I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I did that. So I would consider deaccessioning either of those.
I, of course, also have multiple pots that I regret buying. Many of them were during the earlier parts of my buying time, so it's just tuition. But I do have two pots that I think I was quite excited about when I bought them. It's not like they were crazy expensive. I thought that there was some provenance to it. And they have both, whether or not they are what they were said to be, they've both become heicha pots because they don't do anything good for any other interesting teas.
I didn't
So
even get into my tuition pots. I wouldn't sell my tuition pots. I wouldn't deaccession those. I couldn't say to someone, here, buy these from me.
I don't like them. They suck. Here
These
you
are-
go.
Yeah, these are not.
Those are called gift teapots for your
my
enemies.
best friends.
Zongjun.
Yeah, I'm so well protected by my teapot purchasing senpai throughout the journey. But the only teapot that I think I will not buy again for practical purpose is a Wuhui. I found Wuhui teapot being very not versatile or practical with tea. Like any other clay or finish can do a better job than Wuhui. Basically, you are charcoal roasting your very good geisha coffee beans, and it's going to taste like charcoal roasted coffee beans. And you can wuhui anything into wuhui, and the outcome is going to be the same.
Obviously, there'll be more on the experimentation sections of the chapter, but we continue to experiment with Wu Hui, and I've found very few pairings that I enjoy, but none that can't be done better with a different clay or a different style of firing.
I don't
Yeah,
like
it does
comparison.
good job with Hongcha and so forth. You can brew anything with Hongcha.
That's
and
about what I'm using. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will taste pretty good.
Jason
So
hates
I'm glad.
your charcoal comparison.
I don't like the charcoal comparison because the Japanese Kisaten fresh charcoal roasted coffee with a fan. That stuff's amazing.
Age Sumatra.
Yeah, 1992 vintage. How could you complain about that stuff? Cafe de la Hambre?
Yeah, but that's Kisaten, right? You're not using a wuhui in a Kisaten.
I was making charcoal coffee. It's charcoal coffee.
Charcoal coffee.
Yeah, they do live charcoal roasting in some of the Kisatens.
Okay, I think we're going to finish off here today, but definitely want to thank everybody who joined the stream, everybody who submitted questions. And Jason, I'm going to pass it to you for the usual closing remarks.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us in this edition of Tea Technique Editorial Conversations. This will probably be our last AMA for 2024. next year, as we said, we're going to try to finish off the Yixing book, and we're going to go to Yunnan and start looking at writing the Pu'er book. Thank you all. This is amazing to have you.